Potts from Greater Manchester Police gave this update.
This does not mean our investigation has concluded. We have conducted extensive CCTV and house-to-house inquiries, and we have spoken with potential witnesses and members of the community. We have been told from witness accounts that a man, now confirmed to be Jihad al-Shami, was seen acting suspiciously outside the synagogue before he was confronted by security.
Kemi Badenoch says she'll scrap stamp duty if the Conservatives win the next general election as she closed the party's conference. Labour has accused her of being in denial as she also made pledges on immigration and higher education. The mother of Madeleine McCann has been giving evidence to a court from behind a curtain in the case of two women accused of stalking the family. 24-year-old Julia Van Delt and Karen Spragg, who's 61, both deny the charges against them. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 65 points at 95.48. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.15. LBC weather, cloudy and patchy rain for southwest Scotland and Northern Ireland tonight. Windy elsewhere in the north, but mainly dry, calm and chilly in the south. Lows of 7 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Chris Barrow.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 8:02 on LBC. Welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question. On the panel, to my right, Amber Rudd, the former Conservative Home Secretary, who's co-presenter of the Global podcast, The Crisis Room. Next to her, the best-dressed man in British politics, Jovan Owusu-Nepaul, political campaigner and commentator, who's the host of the podcast What's Left. He stood against Nigel Farage in Clacton in last year's general election. To my left, Dr. Linda Yueh, who's an economist based at the University of Oxford and also the London Business School, and co-author of the book The Great Crashes, Lessons from Global Meltdowns and How to Prevent Them. Might be another one coming along soon. We might ask her about that a bit later. And next to her is Leonie Cooper, Labour member of the London Assembly for Merton and Wandsworth, who's also Labour's Environment and Energy spokesperson at City Hall. So they are here to answer your questions. 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us on that number or text 84850. And of course, you can watch us on Global Player and the LBC app.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Well, let's start with a text question from Scott in West Hampstead. I think he's our most prolific questioner so far. How can Britain's relationship with China best be described? A geostrategic challenge, a national security risk to the UK, an enemy of our state, or something else? Oh, a bit of background to this. The charges against two men accused of spying on behalf of China were dropped after the government declined to describe China as a threat to Britain's national security. Amber Rudd, let's start with you.
OK, my answer to that would be all of those, stopping short only of saying I wouldn't describe China as an enemy. Some of my former political colleagues would disagree with that, but I think there you have the difference between politicians and diplomats, i.e. people who are trying to actually run the government and make sure the relationship with China works for the country. So I recognise it as being slightly unclear, but I think that is the nature of a successful relationship with the second biggest economy in the world, with whom we need to do trading, but we need to do it with our eyes open.
So it's basically realpolitik.
It is realpolitik, exactly. And I would say that particular case did highlight that, perhaps not in a helpful way, but it needs amending, because if people are stealing secrets and selling them or passing them on, that needs to be held accountable. But I would also say the government's got another challenge on this subject coming up, which is the Chinese embassy, which is expected to have a decision on planning or not on October the 21st.
All well and good, but there are so many aspects to this. And I mean, you've obviously been Home Secretary. Do you think that the government is justified in withholding documents from the courts? So the courts in this particular case could have come to a judgment, whereas they've had to drop the case, ostensibly, it seems to me, because the government wouldn't provide them with the evidence.
I mean, we don't know what was going on behind all that. We don't know what discussions were taking place, what realpolitik exchanges may have taken place. So it feels very uncomfortable. I would much rather the court had got everything and was been able to reach their own conclusion. But I still think this is the nature of dealing with China. You don't want, I mean, Chinese do not want us opposing them face to face. If you want to do something to hold China to account, you do it behind the scenes, not right in the front where you kind of attack their face effectively. So I don't believe it'll happen like that again. But these instances will come out in different ways, like with the embassy.
Jovan.
Yeah, I mean, I would describe the relationship somewhat as ambivalent in that China is obviously now a significant player on the global stage, and Britain's place in all of that is changing. And so how are we to kind of forecast or foreshadow our relationship in the coming years going forward? And I think it would be quite stupid for us to box ourselves in with a country that has a significant economy, a huge population that is contributing so much to the world. We've seen earlier this year the Shanghai Alliance, where so many countries are organising now in line with kind of a Chinese agenda. For us to kind of be so resolute about where we are in relation to that relationship, I think would be quite stupid, and also would kind of do ourselves down in terms of how we negotiate relationships going forward.
Linda Yueh, if I remember rightly from the podcast we did together, you were born in China. Obviously, I haven't remembered correctly then.
So yes, Taiwan. So
Taiwan.
Yeah. You have a fantastic memory. I was laughing earlier because you said everybody had a podcast, and I thought, oh well, I don't, but I got to go on All Talk with you.
You did. It was a very successful episode as well.
It's a lovely episode.
So, what's your answer to the question?
So I think our relationship with China is multifaceted. In fact, the more technical term is multi-aligned. I didn't make that term up. I actually heard it from David Miliband, who heard it from somebody else, who heard it from somebody else. So who knows? It could have come somewhere in this room.
Chinese whispers.
So essentially with China, I think you would have multi-alignment or multifaceted. So in other words, there are things that you absolutely compete. Market-based, compete, capitalism, all that healthy competition. Then there are areas in which you have to cooperate. Global public goods, for instance. We cannot solve global warming if you don't cooperate with China, and public health, all that kind of stuff. But the area that this particular case touches on is actually the challenge part. So there are areas in which you have, you can describe it as values, you can describe it as just areas in which you have to challenge China. And I would say, and this is probably not specific to China, anybody who has conducted espionage in your country needs to pay out to account. So as Amber said, we don't know the details of this, but I think the principle of this actually goes beyond our relationship with China, which is if somebody is spying on us, I think the courts do need to investigate.
And I suppose, Amber Rudd, from a government point of view, I mean, all governments spy on each other to one degree.
I'm just having
or
word with.
Yes. The fear, I think, with China is if I don't know if this was part of the equation here, but if these two had been found guilty and been sent to prison, I mean, it's entirely possible the Chinese government would have retaliated.
Entirely possible. I mean, these two were in Parliament, so it was particularly egregious, and it was right to hold them to account. And I would have thought that at the very least it will stop it happening again. I certainly hope so. But the government is under no illusion that the Chinese are always trying to access information. They are always, I mean, the cyber attacks from the Chinese are just endless and repetitive, and everybody knows that. And there's a kind of extraordinary feeling that somehow cyber attacks are outside normal attacks, but they just go on and on. So nobody pretends to think that China is friendly and wishes us well in trade and in intelligence, etc.
Leonie.
I mean, it's quite clear that it is a multifaceted relationship, and with good reason. There are certain things that I think we would all admire in what the Chinese are doing. The move to, low carbon, zero carbon energy has been absolutely astonishing in China, although they do continue to use lots of fossil fuel. But there's lots of other things that the Chinese government do that we couldn't really possibly agree with. So I think Amber's right. We have to have a relationship with them, but we do have to do it with our eyes open, just as we are not 100% aligned, I would say, anymore with the United States or with Europe or with anyone else probably in the world. Where we have differences, we want to pick and choose when we have those discussions with other countries. And they may, well, of course, want to have those discussions with us about things that they object to that we're doing. In terms of the two people, my understanding is there's two layers to this, because it was the DPP that decided to take the case in the first place.
Yeah.
And what I don't quite understand is why they felt they could do that, and then subsequently discovered that they needed to get further documents from the government, because either they had enough evidence to take the case or they didn't. Now, I'm not a lawyer and I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but it does seem that there are possibly two things here that need to be looked at, not just what the government did or did not decline to do.
And what about this new embassy? I mean, what role does a GLA play in that, for example?
Well, we've had several discussions about this at various opportunities, and I think a lot of the disquiet, it's going to be in where the Royal Mint used to be, so it's very close to a lot of significant subsurface infrastructure, so it's not necessarily very obvious. And I think there's a lot of concern, literally we just mentioned cyber attacks, as to whether or not it's actually sensible to have a big embassy which then becomes part of China. It's no longer part of this country. That's the status of all embassies, isn't it? And I think we've got a lot of concerns in the Assembly, and many of us, and that's not a party political thing. Some people are very pro-China regardless of party. Some people are very suspicious of China regardless of party. And I think a lot of us, we don't think it's the right place for it to go.
And who makes the final decision?
I would need to go back and have a look at the planning documents. I wouldn't want to mislead you, but once significant planning cases are larger than the local authority can deal with, quite often they are dealt with by City Hall. So that would probably be either the mayor or the deputy mayor for planning would sit.
Okay. Well, imagine you four are going to be making this decision. You sound as if you'd be voting against it.
I think I would, yeah.
Linda?
Probably.
Amber?
Against.
I would
Jovan?
be voting against it.
Yeah.
Unanimity on the panel.
Yes, but none of us are Secretary of State for the Department of Housing, Communities and Local Government, who I think it rests with now, having called it
So
in.
not the Mayor of London?
No, I don't think so, because Angela Rayner it was.
If it's been called in, then it goes one layer above
I
the
project
regional.
permanent and repetitive postponement.
Well, I think we've had that already, haven't we?
It can go on and on. I think. But nobody's going to want to say no, and nobody's going to want to say yes.
That's actually, isn't that a Chinese no, is what it's known as? So the joke goes, if you're a Chinese business person and you say yes, you mean maybe. If you say maybe, you actually mean no. If you say no, you're actually not a Chinese business person.
You can say that, I can't. Right, let's go to a break a little early. We've got a couple of questions coming up on the Conservative Party conference and the consequences of that. It's coming up to 14 minutes past 8.
LBC.
For anyone needing assistance when travelling with TfL, such as people with visual or mobility impairments, our Turn Up and Go service has staff on hand to help. It's available at all London Underground, London Overground and Elizabeth Line stations, and there's no need to book. Just turn up and go. That is how we're making the greener way to travel more accessible to all. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Greener than total estimated petrol and diesel car emissions.
Every supermarket has a premium range, but there's only one number one from Waitrose. With products like the number one Wagyu topside seasoned roasting joint, naturally marbled and meltingly tender. Or the number one sticky cinnamon bun pudding. Buttery, rich and perfectly spiced. And the number one smoked silver fox cheddar, 18-month matured, oaky and creamy. Food worth getting the fancy plates out for. Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected stores subject to availability.
I've been asked by Shredded Wheat to read out their ingredients list. Drum roll. Whole grain wheat. No, that's it. A single ingredient, high fibre cereal. Shredded wheat. It simply does it. I'm telling you, that's it. Applies to shredded wheat, bite size and big biscuit only.
Combine your pensions with Pension Bee and take control of your retirement. Because when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. When investing, your capital is at risk.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:15 on LBC. On the panel with us today, former Conservative Home Secretary Amber Rudd, Jovan Owusu-Nepaul, political campaigner and commentator, host of the podcast What's Left, Leonie Cooper, Labour member of the London Assembly, and Dr. Linda Yueh, an economist at the University of Oxford and the London Business School. How do you get to do both?
I'm
Is it because you're so good?
No, very lucky, and and I enjoy both places, and they seem to want to keep me around. So.
Good. Right, well, let's go to another question from Mike in Salisbury. Kemi Badenoch said that a Conservative government under her would do less, but do it better. Are we guilty in the UK of demanding too much from our governments? Well, let's ask the only non-politician on the panel, Linda.
I don't know that we're demanding too much, but I do think that there's some big decisions to be had. So I'm just going to bore everybody with a number right now, which is our tax take is roughly around 40% of GDP, national output. But our spending is about 5 to 7 percentage points higher than that. Now, that gap is structural. In other words, we're not really going to raise more tax. So what is causing the increase in spending? And I think that's a very, very hard question. So what we expect from government is to look after us. We need welfare, all of these things. But the question is, can you deliver it more efficiently? I think that is a big question. That's not just about technology, but it is actually about looking at the entire system and trying to simplify a lot of it. So that includes taxes, that includes how we're going to plan forward for social care. So all of these things mean that we have every right to expect government to provide us with the services that we need, but we also, I think, need to hold government to account to make sure they're doing it as efficiently as you would expect, any company, any organization that you work with.
Leonie, what an amazing statistic is we now have more government ministers than we did when we were running a quarter of the world and had an empire. That sort of puts it into perspective, doesn't it? But do you feel as a politician yourself that people expect so much that their expectations can never be met?
I think people's expectations are amazingly high. If you think about the fact that we are barely just over a year into a new government, and already people are saying, "Oh, they should have done so much more. They failed. This is dreadful." That would never have happened, I think, in years gone by. And the same with, I think being the leader of the opposition is the worst job in politics. Now, that's obviously I can quote from 1,000 people saying that, but Kemi's not even been doing it for a year, and people are already whispering and saying she should be gone. She should be gone. I think the speed, the 24 hours news cycle, does put huge pressure on politicians to deliver in what I think are impossibly short lengths of time. So almost everybody is going to fail, in inverted commas, as far as the public is concerned, because you can never do it fast enough.
So I'm part of the problem.
Well, you might be, Ian. I don't know. No, but it is very difficult, I think, because, there's so much scrutiny is 24/7, whereas in the past, I think it was Macmillan who said a week is a long time in politics?
No, it was Harold Wilson.
It was Harold Wilson. Well, no, it's about 5 minutes is a long time in politics. And it has speeded up. And I think that does make it very difficult to achieve and to be successful.
Jovan, you stood at the last election. Was that experience a good one? Did it make you sort of think, I really want to do this, I do want to become an MP? Or do you look at the whole system and think, well, I'm on a hiding to nothing?
Well, it was difficult, there's no doubt about that. I do think there's a society worth fighting for. We're in a society where there's increasing inequality. There are massive challenges around how the state delivers. What does deliverism, that's kind of a term that kind of comes up. Yeah, I really hate it. But that crops up a lot. The attention economy is getting shorter and shorter, but I think the demands and expectations are increasing. But that doesn't mean that politicians should be expected to do less. I think what it means is that they should do more to a point, but better. I think what we're seeing is an expansive state that is trying to do, at times, too much and becoming, I sound a bit like a libertarian or something, but kind of getting involved in people's lives in a way that I don't think...
Can you see the light?
Welcome. But I think the state is, to a point, trying to do too much with very limited resources, with a ballooning kind of civil service. And all the while, people are just becoming more despondent, more disappointed, and more expecting when I think life is just getting a lot harder. So I think it's not about government doing more or less. I think it's about government doing better. And surely that has to be the aspirations of our government, of backbench MPs. And it's also to add that the role is changing. I think the expectation on backbench MPs is a lot more. I mean, some of them are doing a lot more casework than they would have been doing maybe 10, 15 years ago because of the accessibility of MPs. And government ministers are having to navigate casework alongside political work, alongside government work. And so there's a whole range of pressures that are being put on people. And I think if government had more strategic kind of targets as to what it wanted to do, a kind of vision for society that was much more kind of forward thinking, a lot more kind of long about what it wanted to do, then I think we would get better government, and it wouldn't really be a question as to whether there is too much or too little. It's just about being better.
And every word of what you've just said could have come out of the mouth of Kemi Badenoch.
Yes.
Well, she didn't say it.
Well, she kind of did. That was the thing. In that speech, she did say a lot of what you've just said.
And what she also seemed to miss was that her government failed in that task over 14 years. I mean, I thought the speech, there seemed to be a whole lack of self-awareness around the whole thing, because what she was calling for was this kind of aspirational conservatism, which I think to a point is some of the spirit of this country, and neglecting the record of what her and her party have done over
in her speech on Sunday, she did address that, but you're right, she didn't today. Amber.
Can I Jovan, at the end of that sort of response, you said that what government should do is focus on one thing, and what its strategy is, and then it can get on with doing that very clearly. And I couldn't agree with you more. Either this government or the opposition needs to set out what their plan is, and then how much they do within that is going to dictate probably how successful they are. But I think what people get muddled about is when they see government or opposition or politicians in general just trying to touch too many bases and not saying, this is our plan, we're putting that aside, we're not doing that because this is the clarity of our focus. And I think that's what the public want to see and hear from. And as Leonie said, I think that you're going to run out of money if you're not completely clear on what your priorities are going to be within that strategy. I would also say I admire enormously councillors, because you have a lot of hard work to do. MPs have a lot of hard work to do, and I feel there's kind of been an arms race of activity between the political parties. It used to be that MPs would go to Parliament and make the decisions and lobby for their constituents, etc. And now they have to do just as much pothole fixing as the local councillors in order to stop those Lib Dems getting all the votes, because they are so good at local campaigning. Those pesky Lib Dems. They get all the local campaigning so well. So in a way, I do think that local politicians, MPs and councillors are asked to do an awful lot, and they're expected to by the public.
I think one of the best lines from Kemi's speech today is when she said, this country has got to a state where local communities are holding birthday parties for potholes. And I have seen that happen, actually. It was a good line. Right, Kevin says, another 20 Conservative councillors have defected to Reform UK. Is Reform UK just the Conservatives under a different name? Well, we don't have anyone on the panel from Reform UK today. I'm sure we will be having someone in the immediate future. Amber, what do you think about that? I mean, is that... Because they can't be seen as a sort of Conservative Party Mark II, can they? Because they won't then get support from Labour as well, which is what they're aiming for at the moment.
No, I mean, Reform are trying to cover every base they can get hold of. Wherever they are geographically, they try to appeal to wherever the majority vote is there. Their whole plan does not have what Jovan set out, which is a clear strategy to try to deliver something positive for the country. And I think it's very muddled where they're trying to get people from, where they're trying to get support from. But I know that they are losing people from the Conservatives. I can't help feeling slightly cynically that maybe some of those Conservative voters think they might have a better future in Reform, given what the polls look like. But to me, the idea that Reform is similar to the Conservatives is absolutely wrong. But I'm a centre-right Conservative, and I see nothing I like in Reform at all.
Jovan.
Yeah, I mean, to me, they are increasingly becoming a bit of a rehashed version of the Tories. And I think that's not just from the characters that they've been able to attract, former Tory MPs, Nadine Dorries, Danny Kruger. But I think they reflect a very antiquarian kind of Tory idea that I thought had died in the 1950s. So are they a rehashed version? I think, yes, the Tory party is losing a wing of itself to Reform. But the Tory party, I think, is a bit better than that. It's a kind of centre-right.
Oh, thanks. Just a tiny bit there.
I think, because it doesn't kind of lean into a sense of jingoism. I don't think it peddles a kind of xenophobic narrative, or at least the Tory party that I saw when I was growing up. But now all of those characters who had some of those politics are going into reform. And so I think reform is becoming a particular version of the Tory party that we don't really want
Amber,
to
you
see.
served alongside Robert Jenrick.
Yeah, he was my PPS.
Tell us what he was like in those days, because he does seem to have gone on, shall we say, a little bit of a journey.
He's gone on a huge journey. He wasn't like that at all. I mean, it's completely unrecognisable to me. I think maybe the Home Office must have radicalised him when he was immigration minister and couldn't get what he wanted done. But I find it absolutely extraordinary. He wasn't like that at all. I can't reconcile those two people. He was a perfectly easy.
Well, he was an ultra Cameroon, wasn't he?
Cameroon. We all campaiggned for him because he got in on by-elections, you recall. Moderate person. Yeah, no, he's completely different now.
And do you get rather sick of, and I'm sure you've had this on social media as well as me, but sort of, I am a closet Lib Dem, which I'm sure you are as well, or that's what reform people think that we are. We're not proper Conservatives.
Yeah, no, I do get sick of that, and it's obviously it's completely not true. They're just trying to menace us to try and give reform more of an advantage, and I think it's completely wrong. There is, what I find fascinating at the moment, Iain, is that the centre-right is an empty space. And, Labour are not used to consider themselves centre-left, at least Keir Starmer did. He's not anymore, and he can't deliver it, I don't think. Doesn't like his MPs are going to support him. Reform are nothing to do with being right or centre-right. They're in a huge muddle. And the Conservatives have this space. And I think we're beginning to see Kemi, from her speech today, particularly with stamp duty, step into that. I think it could be a turning point.
OK. Leonie.
I mean, I think that the issue that the Conservative Party has is that I actually think it's been hollowed out of the centre-right in terms of people in Parliament. So when I think of one of my local MPs, Justine Greening, could she get selected to stand for the Conservative Party now? Could you, Amber Rudd, get selected to stand for the Conservative Party now? David Gauke, Kenneth Clarke, and I think about, some of the great names from the Conservative Party in the past who really served this country. And I do hold Boris Johnson responsible for a lot of this. We've entered.
I'm sure Amber does too.
I prefer to hear from you.
We've entered.
Carry on.
We've entered. It's not just the speeding up of the news cycle that's happened. We've also entered the soundbite politics, 3-word acronyms, get Brexit done. All of these things like that. And I think that is a huge problem for politics, because some of them are meaningless slogans, but they do appeal where people are very busy with their lives and they dip in and out of politics. We might all be, terminally ill from politics because we just do it all the time. It's an infection that we've suffered from. But most people have lives and they do lots of other things. So they dip in and out, and you get the bright colours of a Nigel Farage speech or even the stuff from the Greens, and people are more attracted to something that they can click onto in 5 seconds on social media. And I think that's actually not helpful for politics. And it does mean that people in the centre ground, the soft left, the centre, the soft right, are now being winnowed out. And I think some of the people from the Conservative Party, because it has effectively moved there, how much of a difference is there between the current Conservative Party and reform? Discuss. I think there are some issues there. It's not just 20 councillors. We also had one of my colleagues decided on the first day of the Conservative Party, an assembly member has just crossed the floor, and Keith Prince is now sitting. He's sitting as he's now going to be sitting as reform. I sit next to Alex Wilson, who's the reform assembly member. He's now not an ungrouped member. They can now form a group. So it's not just councillors; it's also assembly members, and obviously people like Danny Kruger, Nadine Dorries, as you mentioned, Andrea Jenkins. It obviously is attracting people who have those viewpoints, and I'm just sad that the Conservative Party doesn't seem to be a broad church, and it needs to be in the way that the Labour Party also needs to be a broad church as well. I
completely agree. I'm sad too. And there are some people in the Conservative Party who are very reform-like, and they may yet go. And if they do, I hope that the centre-right can reassert itself in the Conservative Party and become that party much more.
I hope so.
Are you a Conservative Party member still?
Oh, yes. I never left. And I still do various initiatives for the Conservative Party. And I make the case, and I always try to encourage people to join the Conservative Party. Sometimes they laugh. Sometimes they don't, because if you join the party, then you can start shaping it.
Well, Matthew Said, the Times columnist, who comes on to this programme quite a lot. I mean, I think he's the best columnist in British media at the moment, and he's done the thing. He said it's counterintuitive, but this is why I've done it. He did a brilliant speech on the platform.
Yes.
Linda.
I'm not sure how much to add to this, except to say, in the United States, this term, rhino, Republican in name only. And so you can see this kind of splintering. And if I think about France, En Marche actually came out to François Hollande's socialists, and that was led obviously by Macron. So sometimes
that's
the party... Fourth, fifth prime minister right now in the last 2 years. So I guess the point is that the main parties are not responding sufficiently, or the perception is they're not, then you can have this splintering off where you have seen it in other countries. And I use those two examples specifically because obviously En Marche ended up as a major party and the Republican Party roughly has stayed where it is. But you can see individuals, well, Trump is the biggest splintering off, and then obviously there are others as well. So I think there is something to be said for making sure that the parties that reflect what we hope are much more, what Ronald Reagan called the silent majority, can really set out a platform to continue to prevent a lot of these more extreme.
Well, we've got a great next question, which is particularly aimed at you, Linda. So we're expecting great things. We'll give you a couple of minutes to prepare. 8:31 on LBC News Headlines with Chris Barrow.
All 6 people arrested following the terror attack on a synagogue in Manchester last week have been released without charge. The police confirmed that 2 worshippers were killed with 1 shot by police. Kemi Badenoch says she'll scrap stamp duty if the Conservatives win the next general election. As she closed the party's conference, Labour has accused her of being in denial, as she also made pledges on immigration and higher education. The mother of Madeleine McCann has been giving evidence to a court from behind a curtain in the case of 2 women accused of stalking the family. 24-year-old Julia Van Delt and Karen Spragg, who's 61, both deny the charges against them. And Cristiano Ronaldo has become the first billionaire footballer. He was reportedly earning £3.4 million a week in 2022 when he joined the Saudi team Al Nassr. The weather, cloudy and patchy rain for southwest Scotland and Northern Ireland tonight. It's windy elsewhere in the north, but mainly dry, calm and chilly in the south. Lows of 7 degrees.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents,
we discuss Kemi Badenoch's Conservative Conference leadership speech. Has she done enough to silence her critics? You can listen now on our free Global Player app.
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
Experience. It's knowing when something is worth waiting for and when it isn't. That's why Saga Health Insurance offers unlimited GP appointments whenever you need them. With a choice of flexible plans, prompt tests and treatment, your health is taken care of. And right now, get 3 months free. Search Saga Health Insurance for a quote today. New customers starting a policy before the 27th of November pay by monthly direct debit for the first year. Terms and conditions apply. Over 50s only.
Would anyone like some Bourneville dark chocolate?
Is it so dark the aftertaste lasts for a week?
No.
Does it taste really, really complicated?
What?
Is it saturated in nibs?
So dark it comes with a therapist?
To the uneducated palate, does it taste like burnt tyre?
Would scientists compare the taste to dark matter?
Is it artisanal, in all caps?
Are the tasting notes gloom?
No pretentiousness, no complexity, no bitterness. Just smooth dark chocolate from Cadbury. Cadbury Bourneville, made to be enjoyed, not endured.
When they're away at uni and the show you all love is on telly. When you're miles apart but still laughing at the same joke. When the emojis come thick and fast.
Ah, triple smiley face and a heart.
I knew they'd love that.
Nothing brings us together like great TV. Make sure your child has a TV licence when they go to uni, so they're covered to watch all TV channels and you can still enjoy all those TV moments in the family group chat.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
On Cross Question tonight, Amber Rudd, the former Conservative Home Secretary, give another plug to her podcast, The Crisis Room. 30-second elevator pitch.
3 people go into a room, a politician, an intelligence officer.
Is this a joke?
Politician, an intelligence officer, and a journalist, foreign journalist, and together they examined the latest crisis. 3 different perspectives, something completely different from first-hand experience.
And Jovan Owusu-Nepaul, he's got a podcast, What's Left, again. What's that about? I can guess what it's about, but carry on.
So we're young lads just trying to explore what's left. The world is changing all around us. Me and my friend Freddie set this podcast up, just trying to explore what is left of society. What does left-wing politics look like today? So definitely tune in. And
another podcast with 2 blokes. Do you not have any female friends?
I do.
Leonie Cooper is Labour member of the London Assembly for Merton and Wandsworth, and Dr. Linda Yueh is an economist at the University of Oxford and the London Business School. Now, this next question, I've got to give you some breaking news first. Donald Trump says the indirect negotiations involving both Israel and Hamas officials in Egypt for a peace deal in the Middle East are going well, so well that he may personally travel to the Middle East on Sunday, after, no doubt, he receives the Nobel Peace Prize on Friday. I'm not joking, because it's going to be announced on Friday who's got it. Right, Linda, brace yourself. This is from Ian. Can I ask Linda in particular whether Badenoch's plan to use half of every penny saved to lower our debt and half to stimulate the economy makes sense?
It makes sense if we had more detail on what that meant. So if you have savings, that's implying that you're bringing the deficit down. But unless you actually have a surplus, you're still borrowing to do current spending. So a lot of this is around what does that mean to pay down the debt when you actually are borrowing to fund your day-to-day spending. So we haven't actually had a budget surplus in about 20-some years. So I think that's the first question. Second question about stimulating the
2001, I think, was the year.
Exactly.
I'm very proud of myself on that one.
No, this is excellent. And stimulating the economy. So again, it's how you actually spend it. So absolutely, there are things that you can do. So I think she's talking about basically cutting the size of the state and the civil service going back to 2019 levels, cutting the welfare bill. Those are all very hard to do. But if she were to do it, that money to stimulate growth, you need the details behind how you would do that. So how do you actually create growth? Well, you would do capital investment. You would invest to grow in the future. But some people would argue, and I think it's a correct argument, that human capital, whether it's in the public sector or private sector, is also supportive of growth. So it all comes down to the detail.
Amber.
Well, I think Linda put it very well. I mean, we had sharing the proceeds.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an economist, but investing in skills sounds like a good idea. Ensuring that communities up and down the country. I mean, I thought what the government announced around neighbourhood investment and things of that sort sounds like a good idea, a good start. So, I mean, I don't know the specifics, the economics of it all, but I think starting with skills and ensuring that people have a sense of agency to determine what they want to do to increase the sense of productivity and self-actualization in all of that surely has to be the kind of incentive. But I would also say in that what's been said is cutting the welfare bill. I mean, we saw the challenges that the Chancellor found herself up against, and I can understand where those Labour MPs were coming from, because a lot of people have been impacted through quite punitive cuts in welfare over the last, 14 years or so. And so I don't think that's the best way in which you can raise revenue to...
Sorry, cuts in welfare, but growth in disability benefit. So, I mean, overall, the welfare bill is continuing to rise. Even the cuts that they tried to get through, that the Labour MPs voted against, were still going to lead to an increase in the welfare bill. If any leader doesn't try to cut that welfare bill, we are going to continue to live well beyond our means, and we're going to head for a disaster. And actually, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves know that, which is why they've put the enforcer into Department of Work and Pensions to try and make sure that he can actually get those changes through. But I don't believe they will be able to get those changes through, because Labour MPs believe, as you clearly do, Jovan, that the state needs to continue to pay for people more and more each year. And I know that Keir and Rachel are saying they're going to bring it down. Doesn't look like they're going to be able to do so.
Leonie?
But the situation in France is like the budget gap that we have in this country, but on steroids. And the French public won't wear it, and they're very split in the Parliament. So we've just seen yet another Prime Minister go after 26 days, and that's the third one just this year.
But the British public do want it.
I think the issue about the budget deficit and growth, and I think they are on the right track when they talk about housing, because that solves a nationally significant infrastructure projects, which I've sat down and talked about with John Arnott and others. And if you actually invest properly in capital projects, and you probably need to do some skills training for various people, but we can do them in this country. It's not just they don't all have to be HS2, massively over budget and massively over time. The Thames Tideway Tunnel, a £4.2 billion project, and it's come in on time, and it's going to also provide the massive benefit of cleaning up the River Thames. It's really significant, and it had a lot of people on site, and I went into lots of tunnels and wore hard hats and all the rest of it. So, Crossrail 1, now the Elizabeth line, was slightly delayed. Actually, slightly, but now it's
worth it.
But it's absolutely worth it, because it's now being used by literally hundreds of millions of people. So that's what we need to focus on, is those kind of projects, and also the housing, where we do have a massive housing crisis at almost every price point in the market. So whether you're looking for social rented, private rented, or if you're trying to get onto the home ownership ladder. So I think it's kick-starting the housing market, and that always results in more people being in work, but also as people move into new houses, they always want to buy new things. Yeah. So it really does kickstart the economy. And that's what I think the government particularly is right to focus on. I could also talk about Great British Energy and the jobs of the future in that area, particularly as Trump has decided to go down the drill, baby, drill line. I think that's the past. We've just had the announcement this week saying renewables are now providing more of energy needs globally than fossil. So, being at the forefront of, offshore wind and such like, I think is also a really good thing for us to be doing. But none of it is, coming back to the first question, something that you can do overnight. And, it takes a bit of time. And it's slightly scary that you've just identified it's been 24 years since we managed to close our budget deficit.
Well, it's better than France. I think that they haven't done it since 1950 or something like that.
I think about 1850.
I was 1850. Well, we always like to beat the French, don't we? Right, Michael has another question, I think aimed at you, Linda. And this, I wouldn't know how to answer this. As stocks, gold and crypto hit all-time highs, are we heading for a crash soon? And what impact will this have on politics in the UK, if there is one?
Oh, what a great question. So as a young economist, I was given some advice. You should either predict the event or the timing, but never both.
Okay, well, let's start on the former. Do you think we are heading? Because, if you look at global economic cycles, you could argue, well, we might be due one soon.
In fact, just today, the International Monetary Fund and actually the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey is now the head of the global banking body. They were actually quite worried about AI, the AI bubble, causing another crash, and whether or not that could have an impact on the broader economy. So yes, I think if you look at some of the valuations, just taking AI stocks, they're very, very high. They are reminiscent of the dot-com boom. But NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said that these companies, the hyperscalers, the Amazon Web Services, they're rich companies. They're not like the dot-coms, like Pets.com, where if they fail, it's completely, the market drops and they fail. AWS is a massive part of Amazon, but there's another huge, obviously, business behind it. So it's, what Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. So yes, I think looking at these valuations, we probably could have a crash. What's unclear always is what actually triggers the crash. But I would say, this is from my book, if you don't deal with a lot of debt, the impact on people tends not to be as significant than if it's something hugely indebted like housing or banking or anything like that. But it doesn't mean that market crashes are not painful, because they are, especially if you own crypto or the AI stocks or your pensions invested in the Mag 7 in the US, as what they're called, a lot of these big tech companies.
I suspect the three of you want to concentrate on political fallout if there is a crash. And traditionally, the incumbent government that's been in power when there is a crash has not exactly benefited from it. We saw that in 2007-8, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. But I think it would be horrific if there was a crash at the moment, because, one of the phrases from the coalition government was George Osborne saying, "Fix the roof while the sun is shining," and the sun is not shining now. And if the roof falls in, the sun is not shining. Well, anyway, it's going to be particularly difficult for those of us inside. There's a cost of living crisis. People are very unhappy already, and there's a huge debt crisis. And if there's on top of that a crash, I think it'll have a very bad effect on people's approach to politicians and everything else. It'll be very bad indeed.
And Jovan, even discussions like this, if people listening thinking, if there's going to be a crash, to use Amber's analogy there, I need to shut the windows. I'm not going to spend. I'm going to save for a rainy day. And that won't help the economy, will it?
No, I mean, people do naturally close in when there's speculation of something bad happening. I think we've gone through this boom and bust cycle of capitalism, within the lifetime of so many of us, that it's just quite shocking and exhausting that politicians and economists haven't been able to come up with kind of a foolproof response.
Yeah, Linda, come on, up your game.
In the early years of my kind of
it's human
life,
nature. I'll come in after this.
In the early years of my life, we had the global financial crash, which justified austerity, which plunged this country in a completely different direction, which meant that for a whole range of people, they didn't see really any economic growth and a decline in public services. And then there's and then there was COVID and Brexit and all of these things that have happened. Some of them have been instigated by us, some of them have just been circumstance of the economy. But then to consider that this is another thing happening to people who are just emerging from another crisis and haven't emerged successfully yet. We know that there is, as I said, ballooning inequality that's going on.
Well, let's hope it doesn't.
What is the foolproof response to it?
There's never a foolproof response.
I don't think there is a foolproof response, but what I would just say, it's a great question, but I think the reason why there are highs at the moment are for different reasons. Crypto has gone up because of various different things that the Trump regime are doing, but gold has gone up because there's been war, and gold traditionally goes up when it's war, and I don't think they're necessarily linked together, and they're not linked together with why stocks are high. So I'm not going to predict because I'm not an economist, but I would say that there are different reasons why they are where they are. It's not all linked to one thing.
OK, we've got some great questions coming up, so do keep listening. It's 8:47.
LBC.
When BP asked me to read the voiceover for their new Wild Bean Cafe ad, I thought I knew what to expect. But when they told me I'd be reading the script next to a mountain waterfall, on horseback, strumming a harp, in a hailstorm, naked, ow, 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 well, that was wildly unexpected. Just like Wild Bean Cafe having a freshly ground signature espresso blend for everything from Americanos to flat whites in a fuel station. Wowzers. Wild Bean Cafe, only at BP. Subject to availability at selected BP stores only.
40 million people listen to commercial radio each week. That's 80 million ears, give or take. Amplify your advertising at radiocentre.org.
Hello, I'm a National Lottery scratch card. Over 5 people a second win with me. Ooh. That's like 30 winners since I started talking. Oh, 12 more. 14. 21!
Is there a win in store for you? Play a National Lottery scratch card today. Winners as an average. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules apply. Players must be 18 or over.
I'm telling you, raise taxes. That's how.
Cut spending. Less waste. More sense.
Move north. Get more for your money.
Until winter hits your heating bill.
Fair.
Up to 9.13% annual return. We all agree that's strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to ignore.
Cufflink. Auto-invest property backed from £500. Visit cufflink.com. That's KUFLINK. Register your interest today. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules apply to IF ISAs and may be subject to change. Cufflink is authorised and regulated by the FCA.
Take advantage of the Kia Electric Car Allowance to drive the Kia EV3, this year's UK and World Car of the Year, or the new EV4, the Times Electric Car of the Year 2025, with a range of up to 388 miles. Get up to £3,750 towards your PCP finance deposit contribution and 3.9% APR representative until the 16th of December. Search the Kia Electric Car Allowance today. Kia. Movement that inspires. Range based on test conditions and may vary. T's and C's apply. Kia Finance.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:49, Amber Rudd, Jovan Owusu-Nepaul, Leonie Cooper and Dr. Linda Yueh with us answering your calls. And texts. Mel in Wilmslow sends this one. Did I pronounce it right? Wilmslow. With the news that the Manchester terrorist called the police to say he supported ISIS, has this country stopped taking the threat of the big Islamic terrorism groups seriously now? Leonie?
No, but I don't know exactly when the call was made. I mean,
it was called during the attack.
I was going to say, how can then ringing, either just before it started or even while it was underway. I mean, I think we do take it seriously. Otherwise, I think this person was generally off the radar for terrorism and had obviously self-radicalised themselves. They were known to the police for other reasons. And I just want to add my huge sympathies to all of the people who were there in the synagogue and also the friends and family of the people who are still in hospital injured and to those that have died. But no, I don't. I think we are still taking it seriously.
Amber?
Completely. Leonie's absolutely right. It's taken very seriously by the security services, by the police. The area they'll be particularly interested in now is finding out how and why he became radicalised. How did he become like this so that he wanted to lead this horrific attack? That's where they'll be focusing. But there's no question that they take it very seriously.
Jovan?
Yeah, I think it's taken with the utmost seriousness, if I'm honest. I think you can tell from the response of the police, the courageousness of the community. I think this is absolutely taken with the seriousness that it deserves. I think just in addition to that is that the nature of terror is also changing and becoming a bit more expansive than I think what we were once kind of conditioned to believe. So it's not that this is being taken less seriously. I just think that there are more pressures and more expectations to consider what terrorism looks like today with all the challenges and changes that we're going through. And so maybe that could lead to why someone would think that to be the case, even though I think, not even that I think, I know that terror is considered with the seriousness that it absolutely
They got there in
be.
7 minutes. 7 minutes. Yeah. That is a serious response.
Yeah, I agree.
Linda?
Nothing really to add to that. I think during Yom Kippur, the holiest day.
Horrific.
It is just horrific. And I really hope
Amber, I think I'm right in saying that when you were Home Secretary, there was a terror attack.
Yeah, there were several. But particularly there was the one in Manchester in May 2017.
Tell me what happens as Home Secretary. You get a call saying, look, we think this has happened. What happens then?
You get a call in the middle of the night in the case of the Manchester Arena bombing, and the police say there's been literally it was like there's been what we think is a bomb in Manchester, several deaths. Please stand by your phone. Who calls you? Private office calls you, and the police came and saw me immediately. The police are coming around to tell you what's happened, and I literally switched on the television. They were filming it, of course, because everything is filmed immediately. Yeah. So I watched in horror, and then I get called in. I go to the office, and we have a plan. And the Home Office, the government will have a plan whenever there's an attack like this for saying what the steps are to take. And obviously it's flexible, but one of the things you do is try and establish the facts, try and call Cobra, either with you or the Prime Minister chairing it, getting all the facts, planning this. Where is the threat? Is the threat finished, or are we going to raise the threat level because there might be other people around? And then you're thinking about how to bring the community together. So there's always a kind of interfaith element if it's a sort of religious-inspired event, and making sure that local leaders have all the information they need so that the public can see a united front, keeping them safe and on top of the situation.
Do you miss being in charge of something like that?
Yes, I do. I did find it incredibly important and effective. I thought I was trying to communicate in those important days. I miss politics overall, but I don't regret leaving when I did. So happy days, but behind me.
No comeback?
No comeback in, but I'll be sure to come back if I change my mind.
Well, if Kemi rang you up and said, look, we need good Conservatives back in the party, back in the parliamentary party, would you consider standing at the next election?
Well, I'd be enormously flattered, but no, I wouldn't.
OK.
What about you, Ian?
No, I wouldn't. Okay. Thank you. Been there, done that. I'm older than you, though, I think.
Let's not talk about that.
Right, James says, when and why did Britain's university students stop being anti-racist and start behaving like avaricious anti-Semites? Following a bit of background here, following the demonstrations held by students from a number of universities around the country yesterday, the second anniversary of the 7th of October terror attack, the Prime Minister has today said that he wants to talk to police about how these protests are being handled by them and whether they need to go further to clamp down on anti-Semitic messages in particular. Jovan?
Well, I don't think students have become anti-Semites. I think students have always been passionate about causes that they take up. I think this is a situation which has kind of impassioned people on both sides. I don't think the vast majority of students who are taking part in protests are anti-Semitic. No doubt, sadly, awfully, there will be some people who have wretched views of people, of Jewish people, of other communities. The response from the Prime Minister, I mean, yesterday there was a really interesting caller on LBC who was wanting to go on the protest and wanted to differentiate the fact that he was going because he was animated by what was going on in Gaza and he didn't want to be seen as someone who was anti-Semitic. And he was at the LSE, he put his argument so eloquently and he found the tension so difficult as to where he put himself. I think a lot of students have found a kind of a tension between what they believe they should be doing, which is speaking up against something horrific that's gone on in the Middle East, whilst acknowledging sensitivity of of Jewish communities on a very kind of somber day, a day to commemorate what awful situation happened in Israel. So I think it's quite a reach to suggest that students have become anti-Semitic and have stopped being anti-racist. I think that the lines are sadly becoming blurred. But there's just a lot of passionate people. Linda?
I think clearly the issues within the Israel-Hamas war has really, galvanized these protests. Actually, pretty much this conflict arose about 50 years to the day of the 1973-1974 Yom Kippur War. And that actually triggered a massive, the first inflation shock. And I think views were very polarized then as well. So I suppose my point is, history does repeat itself. And I think students do tend to be at the forefront. And I think when they are passionate about an issue, I think they become passionate about that issue. And of course, there's going to be views that people express which, should... I would say stray perhaps from the particular issue that they are passionate about. But I've been around a lot of students and I think they, I think a lot of them feel that to not take a stand is taking a stand. So therefore they must take a stand. And I think as with everything, when you have all of these when you have this kind of complicated issue, I do think sometimes the rhetoric can get away from people.
Leonie?
I don't think it was particularly tasteful, and I think it was probably quite offensive to a number of people who were Jewish and certainly Israeli to go on protests yesterday on the anniversary of the events that took place in the south of Israel at the music festival and in those kibbutzes. 1,200 dead and hundreds of people abducted. So I think it was... but I don't think you can say that means that they were necessarily anti-Semitic. Just as I don't think it would be right to say that everybody who might espouse a different view is a radical woke lefty, which seems to be the sort of line in America about university students over there. University students, I think, have always been passionate, have espoused a whole range of different views. The one thing that does worry me is people saying we should stop listening to people who express different viewpoints on university campuses, because, you know, I might agree with everything that everybody on this panel says, or I might agree with nothing, but I think it's really important that people are able to express views, providing it's not, you know, incitement to racial hatred and other things that are illegal. So I don't think yesterday people going on marches were necessarily anti-Semitic. I do think they did run the risk of being found to be unbelievably offensive to many people who were mourning what had happened, the 2-year anniversary.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think it was a complete misjudgment to go on the march yesterday. I haven't really got anything else to add to that.
OK, well, let's go to our fun question. It's from Emily in Leeds. The comedian Amelia de Moldenberg, known for Chicken Shop Date, I've never seen that. It's going to take... I don't even want to. It's going to take part in a new YouTube show in which she attempts to drive at the age of 31, taught by a number of Formula One drivers. What did you finally learn to do rather later in life than most others? Linda?
Bake. So I baked my very first cake during lockdown.
What?
See?
Did your mother teach you nothing?
Let's not go down that road. Yeah, it was a Swiss roll, which I don't think was the best cake to try to attempt in your first attempt.
Wow, ambitious.
And so I rolled, and then the whole thing obviously fell apart. You know, in the Bake Off, the guy who got sent off in the first week, how his roll kind of, collapsed, and Paul Hollywood said it's like it fell out of a tree. I know that feeling.
OK. Good answer. Leonie?
Ski. I didn't learn to ski until I was 30. Yeah, so very similar to Amelia. And I wish I'd learned a lot younger, because the younger you are when you start to do something like that, the easier it is. But I do enjoy skiing, however bad at it I may be.
Jovan?
I only learned how to do this yesterday, to be honest. A mango hedgehog.
Oh, what?
A mango hedgehog. You know, and you put the mangoes in. No.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen them on videos and stuff, and I always thought, let me just try doing that. Yeah. And you cut it in, you cut it a long way, you cut it across,
right,
and then you peel it, and then it just falls apart. Yeah, I mean, it's so easy. It's saved me. It's going to save me a lot of time in the future. So,
well, we've learned a lot tonight. Amber?
I learned to love politics. I became a politician later in life than most of my peers, I found, when I became a member of Parliament in my mid-40s. And once I started in, I couldn't look back.
Indeed. Right, thank you all very much indeed for coming on the show tonight. Monday's panel includes the Sunday Times journalist Jason Cowley and LBC's own political editor Natasha Clark. But coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk about Lenny Henry, because he has made the suggestion, along with his co-author of a new book, Marcus Ryder, that black people in this country should receive reparations amounting to, are you sitting down, £18 trillion. Now think about it. I think the amount that the government spends every year is about £1 trillion. So that's 18 years of our entire national income would have to go in reparations. It would bankrupt the country. I mean, are they just doing this to gain attention because they've succeeded? Because that's what we're going to be talking about for the next hour. Or do you think, no, there is a case to be made here? OK, 18 trillion, maybe not, but there is a case. 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, all 6 people arrested following the terror attack on a synagogue in Manchester last week have been released without charge. Rob Potts from Greater Manchester Police gave this update.
This does not mean our investigation has concluded.